So Troy, we're here on Omaha Beach, right, and we're sitting up kind of in the center of it on this elevated position, but this was where not only Ranger Battalion came across, but we put an absolute ton of forces on this beach. Talk us through for a couple of minutes about where we are, what we're looking at, and what this looked like, much different than it does today on June 6, 1944.
So right now we're standing right at Dog Green Beach. This was the hardest beach of the entire invasion. Right here, if you've ever heard of the Bedford Boys, A Company 116th Infantry, this is where they were effectively wiped out as a unit. So within 15 minutes of landing, they come in at 6:30 in the morning. Within 15 minutes, they are a completely ineffective unit because they've lost all their personnel. They land right up here, and farther out, it's at low tide, so much farther out than what you see here. They are greeted with nothing but machine gun and artillery fire.
Because there's hills. I mean, there's hills right behind us.
The Germans are firing. You've got the German 352nd Division up top. They are firing down here. And what's happening, the soldiers that are on the beach are either hiding behind obstacles that are on the beach, they are staying in the water and slowly trying to creep up with the tide, or they're dead. And the ones that stayed behind the obstacles were slowly picked off. The only ones that actually made it to the beach were the ones that made it to the seawall, which is right in front of us. So basically the ones that lived were the ones that moved.
Because they were what? Well, number one, they had shelter, but two, they were below the depression of the gun.
Absolutely. And so we're going to talk about Dog Green. Right over here is Dog White, and then this is Charlie sector. And this is so we're at the far end, the far left of Omaha Beach. Dog Green is where they come in initially. Dog Green was considered closed, but what's happening is over here, 15 minutes later, C Company 2nd Ranger Battalion lands. And a lot of times when people think about the 2nd Ranger Battalion at Normandy, they think solely of Point Du-Hoc. Well, that was companies D, E, and F that land there. A, B, and C of the 2nd Rangers come ashore at Omaha, as well as the entire 5th Ranger Battalion. So when C Company comes ashore at 6:45 in the morning, they see what's happening right here to A116, and they do their best to get off that beach as quickly as they can. So when they come off the beach and we can walk up there, they find this draw right here and walk up top and start eliminating German positions along the top there. And that alleviates some of the fire that's coming down on this beach. But while they're doing that, companies B and B and A are coming across. They see what's happening here, but it's too late for them to change. So they both land right here. At the same time, Company B of the 116th is supposed to land here. They see what's happening right here on Dog Green, and they land over at Dog White over there, which is a much less contested sector. They are able to get off the beach a little bit, and the entire 5th Ranger Battalion is supposed to land here. They see what's happening. Their colonel was Colonel Max Snyder. He had been in combat before. He sees what's happening. He tells his coxswains and his boats, no, veer over there. So the entire 5th Ranger Battalion veers off course and lands at Dog White and gets off the beach mostly intact.
Wow. So you talked about how it was low tide.
Yes.
It's high tide right now.
High tide now.
But you can see out there, I mean, that's several hundred meters where you can see that sandbar.
Absolutely.
Out there.
And it's flat and there's no cover. So they're coming ashore with nothing but enemy fire being directed down on top of them.
What about the naval warships, the battleships, the destroyers who are now sitting out in the deep ocean?
They are out there, but they're also afraid to fire at this point because they don't want to hit friendlies. And so they're trying to suppress stuff that's up top, but they don't know who's what and where. And so there's a lot of confusion that's happening right here on this beach at that time.
I mean, these houses
Right.
weren't here.
So-
So talk about what was in these hills.
So the irony of all this is there were vacation homes along this beach.
Uh-huh.
The Germans demolished them to make clear fields of fire and also to use the construction material for some of their bunkers.
Uh-huh.
So right here, you would have had the open sandy beach. They would have come up to this rock barrier that you see in front of you.
Uh-huh.
And then finally the seawall. But all this right here would be covered with, you would have basically obstacles out here on the beach. And then you would have barbed wire, rows of barbed wire that are on here preventing anyone from trying to go up. So one of the things that the troops had to do when they came off the beach is they had to blow holes through the wire so they could actually get enough forces ashore. And unfortunately, the Germans had very much reinforced this area because where we just came up right there is a natural draw. And so that was going to be a natural point for an enemy force, us being the enemy, to go ashore. And so they heavily reinforced that.
And then what did they have for weaponry here?
So you had artillery emplacements, you had machine gun positions, you had mortar positions, and we're going to go up to one of those positions right there, which is a bunker that was taken out by Charlie Company 2nd Ranger Battalion. And if you look at that bunker, look how it's sighted.
Yeah.
So you can't see it
No.
from the seaward side. You don't even know it's there.
Right.
But it takes this whole beach in its line of fire.
Yeah.
So there's a machine gun positioned in that bunker, as well as an artillery piece that is ranging this entire beach.
Wow.
So it's this gun right here that is hitting A Company 116th when they come ashore.
When we think about that first 30 minutes, how many forces are actually coming ashore or attempting to come ashore?
So attempting to come ashore, you're trying to get the 3 companies of the 2nd Ranger Battalion ashore. You're trying to get the 5th Ranger Battalion ashore. You're trying to get a couple regiments of the 29th Infantry Division ashore. And basically they're coming in waves because they have to come in waves because they only have the capacity to bring in so many people with all the landing craft.
Right.
But with each landing craft that's sunk out here, that's less men that are coming ashore, and that's less men that you can go back and pick up with that same landing craft. Because there's a shortage of landing craft, and that limits how much stuff you can bring across.
And they're going back out to the naval destroyers to pick folks up,
to
and
the Navy ships to pick them up and bring them back in. But think of this too, that as there's more destruction on this beach gets cluttered. So not only do you have sunken landing craft, but unfortunately you have bodies, you have vehicles that are burned out right here. So it becomes a matter of, do I keep landing on top of an already overcrowded beach that can't get off this beach right here because of the German defenses on the cliff?
So what is that thought process? I mean, I think back to my time as a commander, right? And now you're back and you're thinking about, okay, what is the point in which we have to continue to push or we have to pull back? What's going through their mind?
And keep in mind too that there's a pretty poor communication that's happening from the beach to the ships. So they may not have a full picture of what's actually happening on the beach right here. And for grand strategy, what they have to do is Utah Beach, which is over here, they have to be the link up between the British beaches and Utah Beach. And so it's critical that they take this piece of ground, because if not, the Germans could split the American forces and the British forces. Rangers make it to this cliff here, and they're pretty concealed from fire compared to what they were experiencing before, and work their way up this cliff right here, and they're going to take out this position that's in front of us.
So now they've got to fight their way up this draw.
Fight their way up, and they're fully loaded, they're wet, they're tired. This is
how long can you estimate it took them to get from the landing craft up now to this position?
I think half an hour.
I mean, this is perfect.
That's high tide, but the beach is down there. So think of your field of fire that you have just from this position alone.
And you have the whole beach.
The whole beach.
The whole beach. Yeah. And all you've got to do is suppress this position.
At this point, your main fear is running out of ammunition.
As a German.
As a
German. So we're in the German bunker right now that has a complete observation of almost, I'd say, 75% of the beach right now. How thick is this bunker?
So if you look at it from the side, you can see how thick it is. But if you look at the ceiling right here, what you'll notice is there's concrete reinforcement. And so unless this thing gets a direct hit from basically a large naval shell, it's going to stay as a position. And so because it's also buffered by soil on the other side. And so you're not going to take this position out because you can't even see it from the seaside.
Right.
It's got to be basically an infantry assault on this thing.
Okay, so we're standing in it. So obviously it did not take a direct hit from anything.
Correct.
So let's talk about now the Rangers who we walked up the hill.
Right.
Okay, which is relatively, we understand that's what they had to come up this draw. But as you rightly said, you can't see everything here. So now, from this angle, what's the direction that the Rangers came up here, and how did they take this out?
So they would have come up straight from this cliff, and I can't speak exactly how they would have taken out this cliff or this position, but they probably would have thrown grenades right in the entrance.
Yeah.
And
similar to how they do it today.
Yeah, similar, yeah. It's a clearing operation. You take out the occupants and you move on.
You got one job in Ranger Battalion: destroy the enemy. All right, so what we're doing right now is we're breaking brush and we're making our way through this thick vegetation. So basically after the Rangers made it up to the bunker, took out the bunker, now they've got to get up to the top so that they can understand where the additional German positions are across the entire cliff line, and then get a look at the town and understand where the next objective is.
So from here, you can kind of see the view of, again, what the Germans saw, but also, the top of this cliff was riddled with German fighting positions. So trenches all the way down that are interconnected with communication lines. So they can reinforce, basically, bring their troops in almost, I don't want to say underground, but covered.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. Okay, so where we're going to go next is the Chateau de la Hormel. That is the farthest that troops got off Omaha Beach on June 6th.
To the church.
To the church.
So,
and you can see it's not far.
So 6 a.m.
6:30.
6:30 in the morning, they're hitting a couple of 100 meters offshore where you can essentially see at low tide, you can see the sandbar out there now.
Right.
And they made it probably half a mile.
Right. And so what you have happening here, and what you can see is, so C Company, 2nd Ranger Battalion is here. They're starting to clear positions for A Company, and then later A and B Company of the Rangers come ashore, and parts of B Company 116th. They see what's happening here, so half splits and lands on Charlie, the other half splits and lands on Dog White.
Mm-hmm.
There's a team of B Company 116th under a Lieutenant Taylor that's going to make it off the beach, and we're going to pick up the story over at the chateau.
Okay.
Okay, so why we're here, this is the Manoir del Hormel, and this was the rallying point for B Company 116th Infantry. This is also the rallying point for the 5th Rangers. So everyone's trying to get right here. You can see right down there, we just passed the church. And where this comes into play is back on the beach. We talked about the force from B Company 116th under Lieutenant Taylor that managed to get into Veerville. What they did is they came down this road right here because they're trying to get to the rally point. They take some fire from a German position. I think it's likely those trees over there. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's the most likely position. And they start to fire back. Lieutenant Taylor's a very small force. One of them throws a grenade and it lands into a German foxhole. The German screams, and his screams caused 14 Germans to come out and surrender. So they are now prisoners of Lieutenant Taylor's force. He has to detach a couple men, take the prisoners back to Omaha Beach, and he comes here with a very small force, probably around 20 guys. They come into the Manoir de l'Armel here and capture a German doctor and his aide man, and they use them to start working on the American wounded that he brings with him. They secure this position, and then once it's taken, then they move forward up here to this crossroads.
I mean, it's 1944. There's no satellite imagery. Okay, there's no reconnaissance aircraft that are taking pictures of this thing. How do they identify that this is where you want to go?
So they did.
I mean, look at this thing.
They actually did have aerial photography that had been taken over the course of the beaches, and so using that photography, they were able to essentially tell the soldiers, okay, here's your rally point, because they're picking places they can identify very easily.
Right. Yeah. And they're the only ones out here. I mean, this is just these 20-ish Americans who fought their way all the way from Omaha Beach up to this manor.
Right.
And that's it for the American presence.
And that's actually a really important topic to talk about. And we can pull in right here to this driveway, and this gives us a vantage point in this talk about. So they get to this crossroads here, right? And as they come up, what they see are 3 German trucks coming down this road with about 60 infantry that unloads from the trucks and starts to attack the American force. So again, 20 versus 60. The Americans they suffer, repeat that. The Americans suffer several wounded right here, and in particular, Taylor, his BAR man is wounded. And so Taylor wants to bring this guy back with him. The BAR man on the American side is wounded, and Taylor wants to secure him because they're going to retreat. They're going to go back to the manor because it's more easily defended. This is where Taylor's skills come into play, and we talk about culture and language skills. So Taylor was from New England. He's actually commanding a Virginia unit, but he's a New England officer. But what his men didn't know is in 1936, Taylor had basically attended a German military school as an exchange student. So that's him in a German military uniform as a high school student in basically an ROTC program. He calls out to the Germans in fluent German, "Stop, let me get my wounded guy." The Germans are shocked enough they let him do it. His men are shocked because they had no idea that he spoke German. He's able to get the BAR man, bring him back. They go back to the manor and fend off the Germans that are attacking them. I showed you the porthole. That whole wall, which we can't see from here, had portholes all through it. So the Germans are much more heavily armed, but they can't get through that position because they're able to use those portholes to essentially force multiply themselves. Now the problem is they're getting low on ammunition. They're trying to figure out what's happening, and that's where the other fortuitous event happens, is that off of Dog White, A Company, 5th Ranger Battalion under Lieutenant Charlie Parker managed to work their way up to this position, which is also their rally point. They're crossing a ditch over that way. He actually loses a man in the ditch, but he brings along 23 Rangers with him. They then help the 29th Division secure this site. They beat off the Germans. This site is now secure. It's in American hands. This is essentially the farthest point that they got off Omaha Beach on June 6th, right here. Now, what's unique about this too is after this event, Taylor is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Charlie Parker, who's with the Rangers, has to accomplish his other mission, which is to get to Point Du-Hoc, which is several miles from here. He takes this road up here, and by nightfall, he's at Point Du-Hoc.
On the 7th.
On the 6th.
On the 6th.
On the 6th. He gets in the lines that day. He does a code word. He gets into the lines of Point Du-Hoc. The problem is that Charlie Parker thinks, I'm late. I have to catch up with the rest of the Rangers because they've already gone. I'm the tail end Charlie. He's the first one and only one to get there. So he's the only Ranger that's on this Omaha Beach to complete essentially what is his pre-invasion orders to go across Omaha Beach and reinforce the Rangers. Charlie Parker also earns the Distinguished Service Cross. So you have 2 Distinguished Service Cross recipients that meet together right here to defend a single attack against the Germans coming in from the outside.
Wow.
And here's a photo of Charlie Parker getting the DSC. And this is Max Schneider, who's the commander of the 5th Ranger Battalion, the one I already talked about, being a combat vet and steering the ships away from Dog Green where they're supposed to land. And that's a much younger Charlie Parker. Fun part of the story is when we rented that banner last year, had no idea. No idea. Learned about this afterwards.
I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of the whole story of World War II.
Right.
And especially in this area, is that so much occurred. And it's 80 years later, and we're still identifying and parts of the story.
So that's what's fun about history. Like for my job is, once I figure out where we're staying, and then once I figure out what it was, you start peeling back the onion and learning more. And it's like, I didn't know that. That's cool. And it just blossoms into something different. So our stay here translated into an article that I published 6 months later. And there you go.